The crystal chandelier glimmered like a crown above the long mahogany table, its reflection dancing on the polished silverware. Daniel's family had spared no expense for the evening. Fine wine, rare flowers, and an orchestra playing softly in the corner. Yet, beneath the surface of sophistication, the air carried an icy chill of judgment. Amara walked in beside her husband, her steps graceful and steady despite the silent stares that followed. Her deep brown skin glowed against the soft cream of her satin dress, modest yet elegant. Conversations dipped as she entered, replaced by whispers that rippled down the table. "Is that the dress she chose for such an occasion?" one cousin murmured. "I heard she used to live in the inner city," another said, their voices dripping with disdain. Amara smiled faintly, pretending not to hear, her composure unshaken. Inside, however, her heart ached, not from shame, but from the painful familiarity of prejudice. Daniel offered her a small, nervous smile as they took their seats, his fingers twitching near hers but never daring to hold them in front of his family. The clinking of glasses began the dinner, laughter echoing from those who mocked her the loudest. Amara stayed silent, responding only with politeness, her dignity and armor. Midway through the meal, her phone buzzed quietly in her purse. She excused herself with a calm smile, stepping away from the table. On the screen flashed a single message. "All preparations complete. The announcement goes live at midnight." Her lips curved into a secret, knowing smile. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "It's time." Then she straightened her shoulders, smoothed her dress, and returned to the table, ready for the night that would change everything. The dinner plates gleamed beneath the chandelier as servers poured wine and laughter floated through the room. But beneath the golden glow, the conversation turned sharp. Veronica, Daniel's mother, leaned back in her chair, her pearl necklace glinting as she said sweetly, "Amara dear, you've adjusted quite well for someone from such a modest beginnings." A few guests exchanged amused looks, their smiles cutting deeper than words. Daniel shifted in his seat but said nothing. His mother's voice carried the weight of authority, and he, once again, chose silence over defense. Daniel's sister, Lydia, smirked as she swirled her glass. "Do you even know how to pronounce Chateau Margaux, Amara? It's one of our favorites." A ripple of laughter spread around the table. Amara's smile didn't waver, though her pulse quickened. Her eyes met Lydia's, calm and unflinching. "I may not know every name," she replied softly, "but I do know that kindness doesn't require translation." The laughter faltered. Lydia looked away. For a brief second, silence reclaimed the table. Still, Daniel remained quiet, his gaze fixed on his plate. Amara glanced at him, just one look, and understood everything. Fear, shame, weakness. Her heart clenched, but she kept her dignity intact, holding her posture with quiet strength. As the conversation resumed, her mind drifted to their wedding day. Veronica whispering to guests, "She's only after his money." If only they knew then how wrong they were. Amara rose gracefully from her seat, offering a polite smile. "Excuse me for a moment," she murmured, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. She walked toward the restroom, the click of her heels echoing softly against the marble floor. Inside, the silence was deafening. She leaned against the cool countertop, gripping the edge as her composure began to crack. Her reflection stared back, a woman poised yet weary, strong yet wounded. A single tear slid down her cheek before she quickly wiped it away. Memories surfaced, long nights studying under dim lights, her mother's worn hands guiding her through hardship, the determination that had built her empire from nothing. The world saw a woman of humble roots. No one knew she had inherited not poverty, but power, a legacy she had chosen to keep secret until the right time. She took a deep breath and met her own eyes in the mirror. "They'll know soon enough," she whispered, her tone a mix of pain and quiet triumph. Her phone buzzed again, vibrating on the counter. A message from her assistant flashed. "Press release confirmed. Acquisition goes public at midnight. Congratulations, Madam CEO." A slow, radiant smile spread across Amara's face. The ache in her chest eased, replaced by calm assurance. The same people who mocked her would soon realize they had dined beside the woman who owned what they worshipped most: power, prestige, and respect. Tonight, her patience would become her revenge. The memory flickered in Amara's mind like a warm, familiar melody. It had been a rainy afternoon at a small community shelter downtown. Children laughed as she handed out food. Her laughter softer but full of light. Daniel had arrived there by chance, delivering donations on behalf of his family's company. He noticed her immediately. The woman in a simple t-shirt and jeans, her hair tied back, her hands busy serving others before herself. When she smiled at an elderly man and whispered, "You're never forgotten here," Daniel's heart stirred. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply cared. They struck up a conversation, and for the first time, Daniel met someone who didn't talk about wealth or influence. Amara's humility drew him in deeper than any luxury could. She told him she worked in business consulting, leaving out the details that her business stretched across continents. As days turned into months, their connection deepened. Daniel's family disapproved, calling her ordinary, unsuitable, beneath their name. But Daniel, in love, chose her anyway. He believed he was rescuing her from a modest life, never realizing it was she who could have saved him from his shallow world. One evening, as they stood watching the city lights, Amara rested her head on his shoulder and said softly, "One day, they'll see who I really am." He had laughed then, not knowing how prophetic those words would one day be. The afternoon sun poured through the tall windows of Veronica's mansion, casting long golden streaks across the dining room. Veronica had gathered her circle of wealthy friends, women whose smiles were as polished as their diamonds. Amara sat quietly at the far end of the table, her posture flawless, her silence graceful. "So, Amara," Veronica began sweetly, her voice carrying a sharp edge, "I hear you've been spending time at those little community shelters again. Admirable, really. Most people outgrow that sort of thing once they marry into privilege." Laughter rippled through the room. One guest, smirking over her champagne, added, "Poverty suits some people, even when they marry up." The laughter grew louder. Daniel's hand clenched under the table, but he said nothing. His gaze dropped to his plate, his silence more painful than any insult. Amara's throat tightened. She looked at him, hoping, just once, he would defend her. But the moment passed. Her disappointment cut deep, sharper than any word. She rose from her chair, every inch the queen they refused to see. "Thank you for the reminder," she said softly. "I'll be sure to remember this day." That night Amara decided no more hiding. Morning light filtered through the lace curtains of Veronica's grand sitting room as she delicately stirred her tea. The household was unusually quiet until a gasp came from the television room. Lydia's voice echoed down the hall, trembling with disbelief. "Mother, you need to see this." Veronica frowned, annoyed by the interruption. What could possibly be so? Her words caught as she looked up at the large flat screen mounted on the wall. Breaking news. Global tech conglomerate Zyra Holdings acquires major European firm, led by CEO Amara Okafor-Daniels. The headline flashed boldly beneath a striking image of Amara, dressed in a sharp ivory suit, her eyes fierce with confidence, her presence commanding. Reporters praised her as a visionary entrepreneur who had built an empire from the ground up, leading innovations across Africa, Europe, and the US. Veronica's teacup slipped from her hand, shattering against the marble floor. This can't be the same Amara," she whispered, her face draining of color. Lydia's phone buzzed non-stop as messages poured in. "Isn't that your brother's wife?" Daniel walked in, still half asleep, only to freeze at the sight of his wife's face on every screen. The anchor's voice boomed. At just 32, Amara Okafor-Daniels ranks among the youngest self-made billionaires in Africa. His knees nearly gave out. The woman his family mocked, pitted, and humiliated, the woman he failed to defend, was the very powerhouse their world now admired. For a long moment, silence hung in the air. Then, from somewhere deep within Daniel's chest, came a whisper, part awe, part regret. "My God, what have we done?" That evening, the atmosphere in the Daniels mansion felt different. Charged, uneasy. The same family that once mocked Amara now waited anxiously in the drawing room, murmuring nervously as the sound of a luxury car pulled into the driveway. Amara stepped out gracefully, her tailored navy suit exuding quiet authority. Her confidence was no longer hidden. It radiated. She entered the room, her presence commanding instant silence. Veronica rose first, her usual arrogance replaced by forced charm. "Amara dear," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "you should have told us who you really were. We would have treated you differently." Amara's gaze was steady, her tone soft but piercing. "Would it have changed how you treated me?" she asked. The question hung in the air like a blade. No one spoke. Lydia looked away, cheeks flushed with shame. Veronica's lips parted but no words came out. Daniel stepped forward, eyes glistening. "Amara," he whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I let them humiliate you, and I hate myself for it." Her eyes softened but pain lingered. "You didn't need to fight the world for me, Daniel," she said quietly. "You just needed to stand beside me." For the first time, Daniel saw her not as the woman he married, but as the force he never truly understood. The house was quiet that night, the tension from earlier replaced by an uneasy calm. Amara sat by the window, the city lights flickering in her eyes. Daniel entered softly, hesitant, carrying 2 cups of tea. Her favorite, chamomile with honey. He set one beside her and took the seat opposite, silence stretching between them like a fragile thread. "I never meant to hurt you," he said finally, voice low and raw. "I just didn't know how to stand up to them. I was afraid of losing my family." Amara looked at him, her gaze steady. "And in doing that, you almost lost me," she replied quietly. Her words hung in the air, heavy but true. She took a deep breath before continuing. "I hid my identity because I needed to know you loved me for who I was, not what I owned. I thought if I told you, you'd treat me differently. Just like they would." Daniel reached for her hand, his grip trembling. "I did love you for you. I just didn't love you loudly enough." Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. "Then start now," she whispered. He nodded, determination softening into sincerity. "From this moment on, I stand beside you, not behind them." Amara smiled faintly, their hands entwining, a silent truce born from love, truth, and newfound respect. Weeks later, headlines shifted from gossip to admiration. Amara had quietly funded the construction of a grand community center in Daniel's family's hometown, a place that once whispered her name with scorn. The building stood tall and bright, its entrance gleaming with gold letters that read, "The Jonathan Daniels Community Center." The dedication ceremony drew hundreds, local families, reporters, and even those who had once mocked her. They listened as Amara spoke, her tone warm yet humble. "This center isn't just for charity," she said. "It's a tribute to legacy, to learning, and to second chances." When the applause faded, Veronica approached, her steps hesitant. The woman who once looked down on Amara now bowed her head slightly. "I was wrong about you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Amara smiled gently, eyes soft but knowing. "You were wrong about yourself too," she replied. "You're capable of kindness. You just forgot how to show it." For the first time, Veronica didn't respond with pride or excuses. Instead, she simply nodded, a quiet respect settling between them. In that moment, the walls of prejudice began to crumble, not through revenge but through grace. 6 months later, the ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel sparkled beneath a sea of chandeliers. Cameras flashed, reporters gathered, and the world's most powerful figures mingled, all in honor of the Zaira Hope Foundation Gala, founded and hosted by Amara Okafor Daniels. The woman once ridiculed as too simple, now stood as a symbol of elegance, intellect, and heart. Daniel's family arrived early, no longer with arrogance but with quiet humility. Veronica watched her daughter-in-law from afar, pride softening her once cold features. Lydia whispered, "She's magnificent, And for once there was no envy, only admiration. When Amara stepped on stage, the room fell silent. Her gown shimmered gold under the lights as she spoke, her voice clear and steady. "True dignity," she said, "isn't measured by what we own but by how we treat others. Equality and compassion, those are the true marks of wealth." As the audience rose in applause, Daniel joined her on stage. He took her hand, eyes filled with emotion. "I fell in love with your heart," he said softly. "Now the world knows how extraordinary it truly is." The crowd cheered as they kissed. No secrets, no shame, only truth and love. Sometimes the richest hearts wear the simplest clothes.